Good afternoon. Welcome to today's October 8th, 2019 agenda session. I now call us to order. Can I get a motion to approve? Okay. Can I get a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions? All in favor by the sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Today, I want to acknowledge and show my appreciation for the Fire Academy recruits that are here. We have 23 fine young men and women that this coming Thursday, October 10th, will be graduating and be joining service to this great community. I want to commend you and thank each of you for coming forward and wanting to be a part of such a fine organization as our fire department. And I'm looking forward to seeing each of you on the 10th at your graduation. I do accept gratuities for speaking, so if anybody, if y'all want to put together a little change box or something, it'll be appreciated. At least gas to get me there. At this time, I'd like to invite Class President Thomas Clark to say a few words on behalf of this great class of cadets. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah. Make sure he wasn't walking out the door.
Wait a minute, that's what you do before the boxing match, man. We're harmless, brother.
This is way harder than boxing.
I can imagine. Mr. Clark.
We're excited to finally be able to get out on the road and start working. It's, for some of us, it seemed like the longest 6 months of our lives so far. Hot, tough, but we're excited and ready to work and start working with the community.
Okay, would anybody like to ask him some questions? No. This been a while.
Yeah.
Vice Chairman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say congratulations to all these recruits. I appreciate your dedication. I look into all of y'all's faces and I just admire your bravery and what it takes to be a first responder, to be the ones that want to rush in to a situation that everybody else is running out of. And I just want to say congratulations and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Councilman Gilbert.
I just want to thank you also. My brother is a firefighter, or ex-firefighter. He's retired. He loved it. He dreamed of being a firefighter. He became a firefighter. It's a good profession, but it's a hard profession. I really appreciate what all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Kumrai.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say welcome to the flock. and thank you for, the bravery of stepping out there to become a firefighter. We got any women out there?
Oh, yeah.
What
Yeah.
are women at on the team? Y'all should have been in the front row. That's what Yes. Congratulations again, and I hope to see a couple of you guys that'll be, and women. Hopefully you'll be at Station 15 in my district.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I just want to conclude with just once again thanking each and every one of you for what you're going to be doing for our city, and to let you know that this council loves, admire, and respect y'all, and will be there for you to make sure that your experiences as Chattanooga firefighters, which is service to our city, is the best experience you can have, because you'll be working with a good administrative team in the fire department, but you're going to be working for a great city. So once again, thank you and congratulations, and I look forward to seeing each of you this coming Thursday at your graduation. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
Now, at this time, we will go to ordinances on first readings. We have planning items 6A, B, C, and D, which was read into records last week. So now we will move on to resolutions, B and C, which is finance items. So let's start with B.
A resolution authorizing City of Chattanooga, Tennessee General Obligation Bonds Series 2019A and authorizing certain actions related thereto.
Okay. Item number C, please.
A resolution authorizing City of Chattanooga, Tennessee General Obligation Bonds Series 2019B and authorizing certain actions related thereto.
Yeah. Let's move on to police, item 7D, please.
A resolution authorizing the Chattanooga Police Department to accept a 2019 Dodge Charger fully loaded won by the traffic unit at THSO Lifesavers Conference of September 6, 2019, for taking part in the campaign Seatbelts Are for Everyone, to be used by the Special Operations Divisions for an estimated value of $50,000.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Items E and F was previously read into record, so that concludes this part of our business on the agenda. Now, we have Councilman Mitchell.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm actually going to yield to Councilman Byrd. He had some questions that a constituent has raised, and I said I thought it would be a good thing to ask Mr. Holland those questions.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Holland. Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Holland. Concerning the Lupton site, some people were wanting to know about the asbestos removal and how did that happen, and do we have how do they put it, the asbestos removal application, and what that looked like?
Okay, well, we contracted with several engineering firms, and over the course of exploring that Lupton City Mill site, if you've seen the site, it's riddled with just exposed rubble from a demolition project that a previous owner left abandoned. The city took that in back taxes and has been working to remediate the site ever since then. So on tonight's agenda, there is a voluntary agreement that we're asking the council to allow us to sign and move forward with TDEC. It allows the city to voluntarily remediate the site and make the site environmentally friendly again. There are a number of issues, including asbestos, that were discovered on the site.
Yes.
The asbestos is not friable until, meaning it doesn't become airborne and become a health hazard until it's disturbed. We have done due diligence to put out a contract. The initial contract was awarded to Wright Brothers. Right after we initiated the contract with Wright Brothers, we found through some additional investigation with Wright Brothers as part of our contract, we found asbestos on the site. And just to do due diligence, we have not disturbed the site, but rather put out a separate contract for asbestos abatement, which is appropriate and will be handled appropriately in the most environmentally friendly and health conscious manner for both the workers on site and for the community. So we have hired an expert in asbestos abatement. Right after this asbestos abatement is complete, Wright Brothers then can come in on site. But we've had a number of engineers and project managers and contractors now, 2 contractors working to get that site cleaned up. We've been in constant communication with the community, and we've done a fair number of community meetings with those members so that they are well informed of the process and the project.
Okay.
The process has taken us a little bit longer than we anticipated, but we're doing it the right way.
And one of the other questions they asked was, why was this in the city's lap now and didn't go through EPA so that it's some charges or something to be brought up? Why was it put in the city's lap to clean up?
The city, well, and part of what the Public Works Department is doing is taking the site and making it a nice site again. The
Right.
city was taken through back taxes because the property owner didn't pay their taxes, they
Gotcha.
left it in a pretty unsightly condition. The city felt responsible for making the site at least usable again.
Right.
And there were several advocates that prompted the city to take care of that site. And we
Okay.
feel it's a responsible thing to do for the community. And it has taken the city a long time, and we've had the initiative, so I can imagine that it would take a private developer or another person a lot longer. In addition, I'm not sure that it would be a viable project for a private developer, and we've had a couple of private developers who have been interested in it. We've made the conscious decision for the good of the community to take this project on as a city project.
Gotcha. I email you some of the other things. There's some paperwork or some applications that I would like to receive, some things that probably were done paperwork-wise. So I just emailed that to you, and if you have that, I can get it from you at that time. So I
Okay.
can share with some of the constituents.
Yes, sir. Be happy to share any of the information we have.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
That's it.
Councilman Byrd. Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a mess for years, and the folks in Lupton City have had to live with it, and I appreciate Justin's efforts and the city's efforts to say, you know, we need to do something about it. So while it's taken a long time to pull this together, we have been in good faith in going down the road to make it clean, and hopefully, good Lord willing, the creeks don't rise in about a year, it's going to look a lot better and be a lot better for the neighborhood. But I wanted to get with the city attorney, and these folks came in and bought this land for salvage, and they basically took, you know, cherry-picked what they could get out of there without too much trouble, but at the same time, just totally destroying a lot of the buildings and just leaving the rubble there, and sort of just left us with it. And I've got to get with you, Phil, and I want to come up with an ordinance. And I've been talking to LDO about this. I want to come up with an ordinance that would say something in the nature of if a building is bought for salvage within the city limits, let's say larger than 25,000 square feet, we are going to require a bond for the persons or the companies that would do the salvage work. So they can't walk away like that anymore. I mean, this was an LLC, and they just kind of melted into the ground when they left the property. So, but I want to come up with something and put it in front of my partners up here and see if we can't help LDO require a bond be taken out on any kind of thing like this in the future. Okay, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Mitchell. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Justin, it's just a simple question that I got, because I know we've got, this been going on for quite some time, some years. How long has this been going on?
Councilman Mitchell, I'm trying to remember the front part of this, that the city was involved, maybe 3 to 4 years between investigating whether or not the property would go into back tax, what we would do when it went into back tax, and then funding the project. I think over the course of about 3 years. I'm hearing some head nod, or seeing some head nods. I don't actually hear this.
2013, we walked away in 2000.
Because I know it had been quite some time. I know some years ago, it was a African-American man who kind of got in trouble for EPA violations and that kind of stuff. I'm sure y'all probably can read that story. But I would just want to make sure that the process is fairly done, and we're going by the policies of what we need to be doing in this process. But when you talk about Brownfield voluntary program, I didn't even know we had a voluntary program for Brownfield, but what is it going to cost the city to go and clean it up and do it?
Let me defer some specific questions about the exact cost, because I don't recall just off the top of my head, but Dennis will. To your question about what the voluntary agreement does, it protects the city because we weren't the waste generator on site. So what it is an agreement between the state and the city, who's now the owner, to protect us because we weren't involved with the original generation and it also, of the waste material. So it effectively helps the city's liability and also protects the residents nearby, that we will do it the right way. And to the cost, I think Dennis may be able to speak to that.
Good afternoon. If you remember, I think back in about May, the contract for the cleanup came through council for award. It was roughly 1.5 million for the cleanup portion of that. And then that's when we found out the additional asbestos that we needed to clean up. And I believe that here about a month ago, an award came through council for Trade B Environmental, who will be doing the cleanup. And I think it was about 170,000 for that portion of the cleanup.
Okay, now with those funds, is it coming out of our, general funds or that, or is it from a grant from the EPA brownfield cleanups, or where is the money coming from?
So there's not a grant for this. It is funded by the general fund. And the project was budgeted as part of Lupton City Mill cleanup about two years ago.
Okay, so it's been going on since 2013, 2014, and I'm just reiterating this because we have some people who've been around for a while who understand the process and what's done happened. And then we have these new advocates that's just arrived on yesterday and see this on the agenda and thinking, oh, they're trying to pull something over the community, and that's not what I want to happen. I want them to be educated on this very thing, what's really going on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And we have had several opportunities to educate the public where we've been to the community meetings, and they're fairly well attended. I think it's important to point out, though, that the city didn't take the property and back tax until 2016, I believe. It was about 2016. So we've then had to fund the project. So that took another several months to almost a year. Once we received funding, we had to hire our engineers, and then we've assumed a few additional problems on site just because it's complex.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's it, Councilwoman? Okay, thank you. Is that it? Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, at this time, we will move on to our departmental report for Chattanooga Department of Transportation. Mr. Bailey.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the council.
Good afternoon.
So thank you for the opportunity to provide this report. I'd like to focus today's report on several related projects, some of which are coming up on your agenda in a few weeks, that involves strong collaboration with the Trust for Public Land. I always enjoy the opportunity, and I noted that Ms. Moultrie gave, I think, the last departmental report and brought several members of her staff. I appreciated that approach because I come to these meetings each week, and my staff stays behind at the office and gets the work done. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge, first, we do a tremendous amount of work with the Trust for Public Land. You all know that. And we've worked hand in hand on these projects with both Jenny Park and David Johnson, who's here. David, why don't you raise your hand? Y'all probably know David. Jenny was invited to come today, but already had travel arrangements, so she wasn't able to be here. As you know, the Trust for Public Lands work has been instrumental in Chattanooga for preservation of land and for creating hugely important neighborhood linkages. Our trail system is now being used for people to get from point A to point B throughout the city, and we are expanding that access to choices throughout the community and with some upcoming projects. The projects I'm going to talk about, which I don't think I've mentioned, are We're filling several gaps in the existing South Chickamauga Creek Greenway system, which I will show you on a map in a moment, and we're also filling the next gap in the Riverwalk system on the south side of Chattanooga. Also, I've got 2 slides for CDOT folks. I want to acknowledge CDOT staff because there's a tremendous amount of value and hard work that goes into these trail projects. I'd like to first acknowledge Glenn Hurst, Matt Snyder, and Tony Madewell. If you 3 gentlemen will raise your hands, Tony and Glenn. Matt oversees all of our projects. Glenn and Tony, I'd like to make special note of, they do a significant amount of in-house work. I've made the case before to you on how important that is to us. Glenn does significant in-house design and engineering work for us, as in he creates the drawings that are used to build these projects. Tony is not the only one, but in the office, Tony does a significant amount of NEPA work. NEPA is the environmental requirements that are significant in terms of the amount of paperwork and the amount of documentation that goes into all of our projects that come with federal funding. Both of them do this work. Sometimes we have to hire consultants when it's more complicated, but both of them do this work when we're able and when the size is right. And based on what we normally spend on those consulting fees for these projects alone, what they did for these projects accounted for about probably 6 digits of consulting fees. So it's extremely valuable to us and to Chattanooga taxpayers to have them working on these projects. I also want to acknowledge Mark Heinzer, who's the city transportation engineer. He's over all of our projects in our Complete Streets division. And then go to another slide. Additionally, in the audience, we have Lisa Williams, who manages all of our contracts, all of our capital projects, inclusive of these. Greg Harold, who's not in the audience, he no longer works with CDOT. He moved to a different department, but he managed the Riverwalk project as well as other projects. And we recently hired Melissa Kelly, who started just a week ago as a transportation project manager, who has taken on management of the Riverwalk project as well as one of the segments of the South Chick Creek Greenway. We have significant administrative support. Our executive assistant, Amy Mendez, is in the audience, as well as Kate Irvin and Eric Asbo, who both do public engagement as well as grant writing. Eric, I believe, wrote the successful grants for some of these projects, which leveraged a significant amount of outside funding to enable us to fund these projects. And Eric also, I'd like to note, has recently taken on the role of Deputy Administrator for the Department of Transportation. I couldn't do this work. We couldn't do this work without all of their hard work, and you don't often see them on Tuesday afternoons or Tuesday evenings, but I just wanted to acknowledge their hard work and let them see how we do these presentations. Let me go into the more specifics of the project. You can see, I'll go back to the previous one, the lines shown in green are existing trails. I know you can't see my pointer, but for those, I'm not sure I can see it either. The green line on the southern end of the city is the existing Virginia Avenue Neighborhood Greenway, which has been in operation for several years. It's very popular and used by lots of families to walk north and south through the St. Elmo neighborhood. You can see the Riverwalk that currently begins at Middle Street behind Crust Pizza and Trailhead Juice and some other businesses that are on Broad Street, and goes along the river, up around the bend, all the way to the dam. It also intersects the South Chick Creek Greenway, a little shy of the dam, and from there you can walk or ride a bike with your family currently all the way to the Faith Road Trailhead, the Faith Road Trailhead, which is right around where you see the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum label on the map. And then beyond that, the Brainerd Levee, I'm sure you all know, connects you to more of the South Chick Creek Greenway Trail, which can take you all the way to Camp Jordan. With the projects that we are starting this year and will complete by next summer, we are completing a gap of the Riverwalk, which will connect the current southern end of our Riverwalk to the Virginia Avenue Neighborhood Greenway. That's the yellow line that you see towards the left and the bottom of the map. And then there are actually 4 different segments of trail in the shape of this S, this squiggly yellow line, that will connect the current terminus of the South Chick Creek Greenway to the Brainerd Levee. When we're finished with those projects, you'll be able to walk or ride a bike with your family, safely protected from traffic from just about the Georgia state line all the way to Camp Jordan. That's pretty cool for Chattanooga's. You all know what they look like. But this gives a picture of what kinds of full range of folks use these trails, from young kids all the way up to all ages. They are extremely popular by all people, and I'm sure you all know that. They provide a safe way to get around and also a destination for people to recreate. Let me say a little bit about, that's a close-up of that map. You can see the 3 segments that go from the Faith Road trailhead to the north, the dotted red line, to Youngstown, and then what's called the Cromwell connector. That connector is being implemented entirely by Trust for Public Land, with still have some remaining fundraising to do, but are very close to the end of that. And then from 6 to 7 are our Cane Lane projects, which will connect the southern end of the Cromwell Trail to the Brainerd Levee. You all know what the Riverwalk is. Sometimes we show really fancy renderings. We don't have to in this case. We just show pictures of what's already built, because that's what we're building. This is the Riverwalk around the corner as you go towards US Pipe with Lookout Mountain in the background. It's used by all kinds of people, as you know, and we are building a connector along St. Elmo Avenue from the Middle Street terminus down to the incline. And lastly, just a bit about what these trails do for us. The Virginia Avenue Greenway that I mentioned we built a couple of years ago connects to this system. I see people all the time on this greenway walking their dogs, moving around for transportation to get from one end to the other. I think these trail systems are extremely valuable to us because folks have started to use them to get from point A to point B. They're a healthy, safe way to get around, and they are extremely beneficial to neighborhoods and beloved by those neighborhoods that they go through. And I also want to comment on the funding of this, because I think these are also examples of leveraging outside sources. I mentioned the staff that we do have and the great work that they do and how it saves us money as an alternative to hiring consultants, which also saves us time. These projects were also grant funded. There's a total of 5 of them. There's 4 segments in the South Chick Creek Greenway, and there's the Riverwalk. Some of them are funded with our STBG dollars, which comes through our TIP. Some of them were funded through TAP grants. So when you sum up all of the budgets for all of these projects, we get about $1 of outside money for every 60 cents that we spend locally. So that's pretty good leverage of local dollars to get extremely valuable trails through our neighborhoods. And that is our report. I'll gladly take questions.
Councilman Gilbert.
Hey, Blight, thank you for the report, especially on the Greenway. I know that myself and Carol Birds, we've been looking at the airport area, and hopefully we can join this to that part we currently have off of Lee Highway so that people can start going into the Greenway there too. You know what I'm talking about, do you?
The Midtown Pathway, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, so there'd be a connection there. Also, hopefully that would bring in more people for its construction, infrastructure, and also, development in that area, because that's part of it. We're trying to say, hey, we got a greenway that you can walk so far. It's very nice. So I appreciate that. Hopefully we also get other people start canoeing and also traveling through that, because that's a great way of going from Camp Jordan all the way downtown through the river and through this creek. So I really do appreciate the efforts. It took a long time. I'm glad we at the finish line now. Appreciate it.
Well, these projects do take a long time, especially when they're funded federally,
Right.
and our staff knows how much work goes into complying with those federal grants. And I will say, maybe to stress, it feels like we're finishing, but I think there's more to come. I think everybody wants a safe way to walk and bike around their neighborhood, and these are the best ways to do it. We found that people gravitate to these paths and trails. They use them for all kinds of different things. So I think we need to keep going. We need to continue to build these kinds of things in our neighborhoods.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Yeah, I want to just extend a thank you to the Trust for Public Land team who has been partnering with this through the whole process. So thank y'all for the work that y'all doing to make this possible. Good teamwork. Okay. I see no other questions, Mr. Bailey, so I will close out this part of our meeting, and I will now turn it over to Chairwoman Demetrius Coonrod for Family and Youth Development Committee meeting.
We're gonna call the committee to order. Can I get approval of the minutes? Great. All right, now we're gonna hear from the best department in the city, YFD. Coach, if you'll come forward, tell us what you got.
Madam Chair, members of the council, thanks again. It's always a great pleasure to come before you and give you updates on the progress of YFD. The things that we've been doing and how well things are going is really an exciting time, and really recognition of the staff that works with us so faithfully and sharing their skills and their talent to help us reach the community. Today, we're going to highlight our seniors and our seniors partnering with our youth. Our foster grandparent program that goes into our centers and our schools that spend their time mentoring, coaching, and teaching our young people academic skills, life skills, and helping them realize their potential. And we have some foster grandparents here today, but our director, Mr. Claudius Pratt, will give you a brief presentation, and then he'll introduce some of the foster grandparents that took time out of their schedule to come to be with us today. So at this time, I'll present our director, Mr. Claudius Pratt, to present the presentation and our foster grandparents.
Thank you.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
and thank you very much for your time. And I am here to present to you one of the greatest departments in the Youth and Family Development Department. We have our foster grandparent program, and a lot of times when people hear foster grandparents, they are thinking that it's a child that they're supposed to take home, but that's not the case. Our foster grandparents have worked very hard with all of the youth throughout the school systems, and I would like for them to stand and be recognized. We have 6 of the 110 foster grandparents that are here today. You may be seated. And as Coach mentioned, my name is Claudius Pratt. I'm the director of the foster grandparent program. And also, we have Susan Kroll, our field supervisor, who's not here due to previous engagement. And we have Shelby Glover, who's our program assistant. And these are the most hardest working staff that you could ever ask for. I do appreciate them. They help make me look good. All right, now the Youth and Family Development Foster Grandparent Program, our vision is engaging and encouraging senior citizens and helping them to enrich the community and lives of the children. Now, as Coach mentioned, they do this through mentoring, they do this through helping the children in the classrooms, and it's in an area where it is needed. The youth are in, our children are in need, and they are our future leaders, businessmen, council leaders, and possibly president of the United States. Now, the foster grandparent program has been active here in the city of Chattanooga since 1980. And the impact that we have made here within the last calendar year, 2018 to 2019, I'm just going to highlight that. We have 110 foster grandparent volunteers, and they have mentored 357 children in the Hamilton County area. Improvements were made in the areas of social, emotional, literacy, and also in math skills. To become a foster grandparent, the eligibility requirements are you have to be 55 years of age or older. You have to reside in Hamilton County. You have to have a household income that does not exceed 200% of DHS poverty guidelines. You have to pass a physical exam, clear a criminal background check, and care about children and want to help them reach their maximum potential. Some of the benefits to being a foster grandparent is we have pre-service orientation and also a monthly training in service for our foster grandparents. They receive a tax-free stipend that does not interfere with any other benefits. They receive transportation assistance, annual physical exam, supplemental accidental liability insurance while on duty, and they also get the satisfaction of helping children succeed. Do we have any questions? And we are currently in need of more foster grandparents. So if you know anyone that may be interested and they meet those qualifications, please have them contact us.
All right, any questions? Thank you so much, Claudius, for your presentation. And you know what, after this weekend of the violence that we experienced in the city of Chattanooga downtown, I think we should get some foster grandparents to mentor our gangbangers, especially in social and emotional skills, right? Since they're doing such a great job.
Yes.
Now, if you could lower the age requirement, we probably could get you some more foster grandparents, because now grandparents are young, like myself, I'm 43. But when I go and visit the, the schools and our YFD centers and see our foster grandparents, they're doing such a great job. And to see the kids just, they don't even want to let their legs go. They're just like, Granny, Granny. They come in and get control of the kids. And a lot of our households, particularly black families, we're missing that component to have like an older grandmother that they can share that love and, emotional support with. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
All right, well, Russell got a, Councilman Gilbert.
I just want to say I've been to some of your programs in the past, and they are good programs. It's great to have a one-on-one. When a child is not doing it well in school, you have a foster grandparent to come and hold their hand and actually help them in math, especially in math, and to get them on track. That makes a difference in their lives, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you again for your presentation, Claudius. Coach, I had a couple of questions in the back about the purchasing. Now, are those items for Head Start, or is it for something else?
Which items are that, Councilwoman?
For the kitchen, the milk, bread, those items.
Yes, those items are the Head Start items. And give me the specific concerns or questions.
Just wanted to make sure where it was dedicated to.
If you all remember, a year ago, you all approved for the Head Start program to start cooking their meals again. The YMCA had both contracts, our after-school and summer program, as well as our Head Start program. It didn't work out as well for our Head Start program, so we started doing our own again. So there was a need for those items. It's in the purchasing. Facilities, kitchen facilities being serviced, equipment being serviced, and the milk and bread being ordered for the Head Start program.
Thank you, Coach. And then one last question. So we've had a couple of, items coming up about replacing the roof. We've bidded those out. Do we have any idea, like a timeline when we would get started replacing those roofs? The latest one here is for one apart, and before that, I know it was like Glenwood and different places. Do we have a timeline when we'll get started on the replacements?
Well, I think Public Works have been working on the maintenance and upgrades of our YFD centers, and we can get back to you on the upgrades. that's in line and where we are on that. If I'll get with Dennis and
Okay.
we can send out to you what that looks like going forward.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Did you have a specific roof, Councilwoman, that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
went with?
I'm interested in all of them that fall up under YFD.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had several, just about every week. Linwood was last week, I think, if I
Yeah.
remember right, and we've got the Eastlake Senior Center, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so, we've got a whole slate we can give you.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. You know, as we all know and the constituents know, it's been a rumble about Glenwood, so I'm really, want to make sure that I keep them in the loop. And, Coach, your staff and everybody has been really a listening ear and moving forward to get it replaced and all the issues at that YFD Center addressed. So I thank you for that. Yeah, appreciate it. Anything else? All right, thank you for all the amazing things that you do, Coach. Our department is awesome. As you know, we touching lives from the bottom up, and it's always appreciated. Your work that you're doing does not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Well, thank all of you all for your leadership and support to what we attempt to do for our citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're adjourned for YFD, and we're going to the ECD committee.
Man. All right, thank you. Welcome to Economic and Community Development Committee. May I have approval of the minutes? Thank you, guys. Thank you. We're going to start off with resolutions 7A.
A resolution authorizing the waiver of fees for the use of Chattanooga Green and Ross Landing for the Chattanooga Motor Car Festival to be held October 11 and 12, 2019, for the benefit of the Erlanger Neuroscience Institute for an amount not to exceed $10,000.
Seeing no questions. Next week, Tuesday, October the 15th, 2019, ordinance first reading, Economic and Community Development, 6A.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 19, Section 1986B1, relating to qualifications of journeyman gas fitters.
6B.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 27, Section 2757B, relating to master plumbers or certificates of competency.
Okay, seeing no questions, resolutions, 7A.
A resolution authorizing Southeast Tennessee Development District to, on behalf of the City of Chattanooga and Hamilton County, apply for and, if awarded, accept a site development grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration.
All right, seeing no questions, 7B.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a donation agreement in substantially the form attached and any related documents between the City of Chattanooga and Nippon Paint Automotive Americas, Inc. for the property identified as Lot 1 of Harriet Tubman subdivision and known as tax parcel number 136EA005.
Okay. So no questions. 7C.
A resolution authorizing the intent that the proposed City of Chattanooga East Chattanooga Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project, AKA the East Chattanooga Rising Tax Increment Financing Project, will provide necessary improvements to public infrastructure that the City of Chattanooga wants to occur within the proposed time for the project, but does not currently plan to effect in the short term under its existing capital improvement plans. And the City Council will consider an economic impact plan prepared and submitted by the City of Chattanooga Industrial Development Board with aid from the City of Chattanooga's Department of Economic and Community Development with respect to the project in accordance with the city's tax increment financing policy and procedures.
Okay, Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know what? I'm going to hold my questions. It looks like we have a Tubman site presentation,
Yes, sir.
and so I'm going to hold my questions for that.
Thank you, sir. All right. Okay, seeing no more questions, at this time, we will go into the presentation, and I think we have a presentation from ECD in the chamber at this time. Ms. Sharita, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and council members. We have 3 related items that are slated for vote next week. These are all 3. I'm going to give an umbrella presentation that encompasses all of these, and then we will have a separate presentation for each of those after that. And so these items are, again, the land donation agreement for the Tubman site, there's an associated sewer relocation item, and then there's the East Chattanooga Rising TIF application for that. Next slide, please. Okay, first we're going to start here. And so I want to start with the proposed redevelopment of the Tubman site has been a 6-year redevelopment timeline. And so essentially what started in 2012 with the vacating of the housing units ended in 2015 when we completely demolished the site and took it to a greenfield. And so again, we're looking at, this is sort of, if you look at 2 phases, this first phase, this first 3-year phase was responding to the community, wanting the city to step in, remove crime and blight, and take over this housing site that had been vacated. This is the second phase, when you look at years 4 through 6. So if you look at the fact that at the end of 2015, the site had been vacant for 3 years, but is now a greenfield and ready for redevelopment, but we didn't have many prospects starting in 2017. So the city and the chamber got together, put together the strategy, and the strategy was to look at site redevelopment. So if you look at this larger picture here, that's a screen capture from the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development of all the certified sites throughout the state of Tennessee, and that's from 2017. And so what was part of looking at that strategy was getting the site shovel-ready. So if you want a site to be shovel-ready for development, you need to have all the environmental studies done, the infrastructure needs to be in place, you have to understand what the pricing is on the site, so a site appraisal has to be done, and then looking at all the environmental remediation and studies associated with that. So we knew in 2017 that this was going to be a roughly 2 or 3 year process to bring a project to this site. So we applied for, in 2017, a site development grant, recognizing that if we wanted to be one of those little yellow dots in the state of Tennessee in Hamilton County, that we needed to have this site certified to bring a project to it. So we started that process. This council approved the matching grant for that. It was roughly a $200,000 grant with the city providing $100,000 in matching funds. We applied for that, and that allowed us to do all the studies necessary for us to then apply for site certification through the state. So we were approved in 2018, and we started moving through the process. One of the prerequisites for that is that the site has to be rezoned M1. That's why we went through the M1 rezoning process. And when we went through that process, we listened to the community. The community said, we don't want the entire thing manufacturing. We only want part of that site to be manufacturing. But we also recognize that in order to bring a project to this site, we needed the entire thing rezoned so that we would have greater flexibility to be able to find an anchor tenant for the site, figure out how much acreage that tenant needed, and then redevelop the rest of the site. That's where the East Chattanooga TIF Rising will come into play later when we start talking about what's on the rest of the site. So again, this was phase 2 of the redevelopment. Phase 1, acquisition, demolition, clean it up, get it to a green space where at the very least it shows. Phase 2 is looking at conducting the studies. Where are the streams? Are there any archaeological pieces? Do we have any endangered species on the site? Doing all of those studies and getting those in the books. Where is the sewer? Do we need to relocate the sewer? Conducting the sewer drawings. Again, that item's going to come up later. But again, that was sort of phase 2. So we're looking at, we knew this in 2017, that this was going to be a long haul. We knew it would take us 2 years, recognizing we had already spent 4 years in this process. So this is basically the 6-year timeline. And so if you look at 2019, earlier this year we applied for site certification through the state. We have not been awarded that yet, but we sort of completed all the steps necessary to get there. And then that takes us to, if you look at 2019, remember, if we go back to the little yellow dots on 2017, those were all the certified sites. 2 years later, same screen capture, same website. The little red ones are the sites that have been sold in that 2-year period. And again, recognizing in that 2-year period, if you look at Hamilton and the surrounding counties, there's still no dedicated certified sites. But that was our goal, was working towards that, and we're more than there. We heard loud and clear throughout the process that we needed to have community engagement. So when I started July of 2017, I knew that Tubman was going to be one of my projects. So in September, I started having meetings throughout the community to talk about Tubman. And in those meetings, I would put Tubman on the agenda. And the very first one was a District 9 forum at Orange Grove. And we talked about Tubman, and we heard loudly and clearly then that there were people that wanted a technical school on the site. We heard people that wanted homes on the site. We heard people that wanted jobs on the site. We heard a little bit of everything. So I proceeded to have meetings with different associations throughout the 18-month period. And so if you look at those, we're probably looking at a total of, let's see, 3 neighborhood associations, or 2 nonprofits, or 2 council member forums, there's 1 neighborhood leadership roundtable, and 1 joint neighborhood association meeting. So we kind of, I personally, and along with our economic development staff, we kind of made the rounds, just getting a feel for what does the community want to see on the site, recognizing we've got years into that, we're ready to market it, we're working towards site certification on it, and we know just going through the site certification process that we're going to start to get hits. Like the minute you say to the state or make application, we've got a site in the state of Tennessee, we're about to rezone it M1, and it's over a certain size acreage, you're going to start to gain some attraction on it. And we did. So we took all the community engagement and we started looking at some of the feedback we were getting. So the items that are bolded in blue, those are the items that we heard most often. No chicken plant. We heard jobs on the site. We heard bringing housing back to the site. So you go through all of those, and those are the things that we kept hearing over and over and over again. So from a staffing standpoint, that became sort of our filter when we were looking at different companies that were interested in the site. But if you also look at some of the items that are not bolded, some of those are in direct conflict with some of the things that we heard. We heard no jobs on the site, and then we heard all jobs on the site. We heard, I only want single-family housing on the site, and then we heard, we want no housing on the site. So we heard a little bit of everything from the community, and we were trying to balance that and looking at prospects. And so what happens next is you get to the point where you're starting to get hits on the site. Brokers are calling, site selectors are calling, the state's referring companies to you. And so, and this is just during my tenure here, so starting in 2017. These are some of the companies that were interested in the site. They called about it, they wanted specs on it, or they came down and partnered with the chamber to tour the site. So we had a little bit of everything from commercial bakers all the way to racking system assemblers. And if you look at the ones in bold, the M1 rezoning had conditions on it. That eliminated some of those. But again, listening to the community, we were also able to sort of, remove some of them from consideration. So that, for instance, when the community said, we don't want a lot of jobs on the site that's going to have a huge impact on the neighborhood or gentrify the neighborhood. Well, if you have someone who comes in that's got 300, 400 jobs on the site, that's going to have a serious impact on your neighborhood. Or someone who said, we don't want heavy industry, we don't want heavy manufacturing. Well, if you've got boilers and steam and all of those kinds, that's heavy industry. Well, M1 ruled out some of that. Heavy equipment attachment maker that was going to use 10 acres that was just outdoor storage. Well, M1 zoning ruled out that. So again, going through and looking at all of this, we started to eliminate some of the prospects that were interested in the site based on the feedback we'd received from the community and the feedback that we received during the M1 rezoning process. And so that kind of takes us to, again, that automotive paint manufacturer was in with all of the other ones, and that sort of led us to where we are today when we start talking about, the prospects that we have. And so that kind of leads us into the chamber's presentation that's going to talk a little bit about the prospect that we have. And internally, we often referred to the prospect as a unicorn because it was a unicorn. They had jobs, but not too many jobs. They had trucks, but not too many trucks. They were willing to use solar for their trucks and not taking trucks for the neighborhood. And again, some companies weren't that flexible, and we felt like we found a prospect that was based on listening through the community over the past 18 months and attending meetings and really incorporating that feedback and filtering out some of the prospects that came to the table. So I'm going to turn it over to Charles Wood from the Chamber. The Chamber's our official economic development partner when it comes to recruiting large corporations and retaining companies here in the city of Chattanooga. and he's going to take it over and do the next phase of this presentation.
And then we'll jump back into the TIF. if That's okay. Good afternoon. So,
Good afternoon.
as I think, as Sharita kind of indicated, this is a little bit of a Goldilocks scenario, right? Is finding a company that's not too big, not too small, that makes a good impact on the community. And I would say strategically, the idea around Tubman, along with really a broader strategy, I think, in economic development for the chamber going forward, is to work to push jobs to areas of the city that need them the most. And so we really view the Tubman redevelopment as well as this project as a mechanism to do that. And so we know that not everyone is going to be ecstatic about everything we work on, but we think the impact on this is going to be substantial over the long term. So with that, just a little bit about the company. So Nippon Paint is based out of Osaka, Japan. Their U.S. operations are mainly led out of their Cleveland facility. They have a headquarters in New Jersey. And this facility is really around automotive paint. So they also do architectural, if you think about housing, and one of their competitors is Sherwin-Williams, but this is really focused on automotive. It's driven by the location of the Mazda-Toyota joint venture that's happening in Huntsville. And so they view Chattanooga as kind of an optimal location to serve that, but also for other potential automotive OEMs in the future. So again, kind of going back to that, where we need it the most. So this gives you a half a mile circumference window around the Tubman site. And as we really looked at this, I mean, it's not hard to see that that East Chattanooga needs some support. And I'll tell you, I'm not saying this as much for the council to hear this. I know you guys are aware of the challenges in the community, but I will tell you there are many people in Chattanooga who I don't think understand the complexity and the dynamics around places like East Chattanooga and some of our lower income areas. And so only 15% of the population within a half a mile has any post-secondary capacity. So that doesn't just mean degrees, that also means certificates beyond high school. And almost 30% of them don't have a car. They don't have access to a vehicle, which means effectively, if they can't walk to it or get on a bus, they're in trouble, right? So they're limited. So getting little Johnny to piano practice becomes a problem. Not that that's necessarily the first priority. Average household income is less than $25,000 per year. Really, about 70% of the households make less than that. And that's not per capita, that's per household. So I want to be really clear about that as the community is kind of thinking about projects like this, that there are a lot of people in Chattanooga that are doing really well, but there are a lot of people who aren't. And so this project is a way to have an impact on that. Median age is roughly 30. Working age population, about 53% of the population is in working ages, right? So effectively 18 to 65. And so what that means is there are people who are at the right age to be able to take advantage of jobs that are created, and about 10% of the population is filing as unemployed. Now that doesn't mean there's not more people who are working. That just means they're actively filing for unemployment. So just so we're kind of clear on what it looks like around this. The project itself will directly create 150 jobs, a $60 million capital investment, and then a total average wage of $47,000. There's also an indirect benefit of an additional 165 jobs. And effectively what that means is when money gets spent by the people who create those jobs, the 150 jobs, that then effectively creates a multiplier impact on the community. They spend money at restaurants, they spend money on housing, and that drives more job creation. And so there's a $17 million direct and indirect value on job creation, just to give you guys a view of that. We know as part of kind of going through this process and hunting for a company that's going to be a good fit, that we needed to pay attention to the opportunity around stewardship and how the company looks at both its environmental as well as its safety impacts for its employees. So you can see on this list, there's a number of things I think to view. I would say one thing in particular, this is a paint company, so the employment environment would not be dissimilar from, say, a Volkswagen, the Volkswagen paint shop, or from Westar Aviation's paint shop out at the airport. So you have a similar working environment related to that. But I would say that all waste from the process is then moved off-site. So they don't store anything on site. They have a third party that takes care of that and takes it off-site. So nothing stays on site, that's any of the waste from the process, from the manufacturing process. Much of this will be water-based, so not necessarily oil-based. And there's significant amount of requirements and reporting that have to be done to the Tennessee Department of Environmental Conservation, as well as the Hamilton County Health Department. And then from a safety perspective, I think it's also important to understand that they go through a pretty rigorous process with OSHA around workforce safety. And the company just hired someone to lead North American safety for the company. So in addition to what happens in Chattanooga, they're looking at a bigger perspective. And then lastly, the development itself will be developed to LEED certified standards, which is basically kind of the environmental friendliness of the facility itself. And so this is a company that has a track record of being good stewards in their other facilities. They don't have anything that's outstanding against them. And so we felt like as we worked through the process with this company that really we wanted to make sure we had somebody who would be a good steward of the site and a good steward in the neighborhood, and we feel very comfortable with that. From a job creation perspective, the jobs really will range kind of from an entry level of $13 an hour up to about $30 an hour. Some will be a little higher from a management perspective. The majority of the jobs will range between $16 and $22 an hour, and there's a commitment for on-the-job workforce training that will happen with the company. Some of those positions, I'm sorry, that's pretty light the way that pops up. Hopefully it's better on your screen. So some of the positions I wanted to highlight, these are positions that basically will require a high school diploma or less. And so you can tell there's about 80 jobs that will be part of this that really will be require a relatively low skill entry point, so low barrier to entry for people who are interested in those jobs, and then the ability to move up as they go. So again, this is wages after the start. So if you think about a warehouse employee, they're not going to start at $16 an hour. They'll probably start around 13, but be able to work their way in. And then the company is very committed to basically ongoing training to allow their employees to move up throughout the ranks. And that was something that we talked about and the mayor's office has talked about in the past. There's a number of other positions that will require more training, and so there'll be opportunity along with that. And then, of course, I lost my presentation. That helps kind of so you can see a little bit better there. There's a number of positions that will also require higher level training, right? So there's engineering that's required around with a 4-year college degree. And for those, there's an interest in a co-op program with University of Tennessee at Chattanooga with their chemical engineering program. So we feel like there's a good basis here for a mix of jobs, but also a pretty substantial opportunity for people with high school or below education to be able to jump into this. Really quick on the site, this area outlines the portion of the property that would go to the company, which is 29 acres. The facility would be 270,000 square feet. It includes room for training rooms, R&D, beyond manufacturing, and construction is planned for first quarter of next year. The appraised value of the land, and so this was the appraisal done on the property after demolition for that 29 acres, is $1.1 million. Sewer line location in the agreement is agreed to within 9 months. And then the performance requirement, and I'll talk to this a little bit more on the next slide, is 100%. And so really what this means, and I'll kind of start at the bottom, from a clawback perspective is we use the state's contractual requirement, which means effectively you have to hit 90% of your job creation and 90% of your capital investment to be able to continue to qualify. If you don't hit that 90%, you pay the entire value of the land back to the city. So effectively, they are highly incentivized to make sure they hit that 90% number because it's not prorated, which is typically how most of our pilot agreements work. In this case, it's 100% repayment. And I believe that per the agreement, they have 45 days to make that payment if they don't hit their numbers. So it's a pretty strong clawback threshold. It's a little broader than what we've done in the past, and I think the company understands that there's been a lot of effort and a lot of commitment on this property, and so we wanted to make sure that this had a
this had some teeth in the agreement. The company will provide training and report wage information to the Department of Labor, so that becomes that's a quarterly report that becomes available to the public. And the cities, in the agreement, the city's workforce department will be looked to provide recruitment and screening. And the reason for that is, frankly, the company doesn't know the neighborhood, but the city does. And so we really, from a city perspective, the workforce department there, as well as other partners in workforce development, will be needed to be able to really make sure we're out pounding the pavement and making sure folks know about the opportunity that's there. The company can trade them, but they've got to get them in the door first. And so I think this is a critical part of the partnership that goes on beyond the signing of the agreement, right? So this is something that's going to have to happen over a long period of time, and the city effectively is on the hook to do that for the agreement. With that, any questions for the group? Or are we waiting
Thank
till the
you.
end, or are we okay?
So we can get to questions right now, okay? Councilman Gilbert.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Quite a few questions. You know that in our city, we have a contractor participation in the U.S. Department of Labor Certified Apprenticeship. In other words, we have great programs here locally. And I hope that they look at that and actually provide opportunity for our locals. So if they're going to be a part of our family, I consider them part of the family now, then hopefully they will hire here. As you know that years ago, UTC made a study on if money stays within the city itself, it turns over so many times.
That's right.
And that's a great opportunity for this to happen with our local contractors here, our local certified trainers that we have here. We have some locals, iron workers, you have also IBW, but we got some good professional people here. Another thing is that I want to try to think outside the box this time. You know, I heard you said about training the city, helping get the training, finding the people. Let's go beyond that. Before the first brick, the first bulldozer building that property, why don't we start looking at, because a lot of these classes probably going to be on computer, a lot of training going to be on computer most likely. We have a great facility that Anthony Bird has around the corner that we can utilize, I hope, to help train the people in East Chattanooga, in the Avondale area, to get ready so when that company is finished, they are ahead of the game.
Yep.
Not only that center, but you also have Carver Center down the street, you got Glenwood, you got Eastdale across and we need some more, and we also got Brainerd. That will help train our people to be ready, not when they actually be here and already ready to go, but already ready to get into the company and make a difference. The other thing I want to ask was, I seen the dollars and cents that you said that they were making. It looks good, but was that the base pay? Where is that at on the scale? Because I know a lot of times you have the best pay, a base pay, and then you have the mid and the ending.
So the low point of entry is $13 an hour. That'd be the low point of entry, say for a warehouse employee, and then it scales up over time beyond that. So the numbers you saw will be what they average out to once it's in full production.
I hope they have in place where that in so many years they can actually show that if you be with our company doing a great job, you be making this $16 or whatever it may be at this point, at this time, if you've been here on this company this long. Because a lot of times we have a base pay was $13, but it takes you 100 years to get to the 16. So I want to make sure that, to me, it's good business. If a company can do that, it's really good business when you can kind of guide your employees in the right direction to get them where they want to go for living in this area and providing the funds in this area for us. If we keep money here, like I said before, you know, it stays here, you know, for groceries. Same thing that the Visitor Bureau do. They look at how much money we bring to the city, billions of dollars, and how that helps make the city grow, makes us not have to raise taxes all the time, but it helps. So I hope that message will get back to them, that's what we're kind of looking for.
Absolutely. And we're also looking at the community center, but also Hardy Elementary as basically kind of a recruitment opportunity. So to be able to spread the word effectively in Hardy Elementary as an example for parents that have their children there. So that's one mechanism we want to use to make sure we're kind of spreading the word. But I think Coach has got that center, so it'd be a great place to start.
Great place.
And I know that's great, but then again, I go back to what I said, is it gonna be ready? You know, you have to get that school ready also. So by the time that gets ready, I wanna make sure we get on that, going fast track. That center gonna be ready before that part of that school be ready. So opportunity is there. I know that Councilman Burry is working on a committee and getting them ready for the community, for us, seeing their views, what they want to see, and that's one of the main things, jobs, and good jobs, not just the base jobs, but good jobs, so they can be trained and actually fit the need of the company.
That's it.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job. Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate what you're saying, Russell, but we need to be honest about it here. We have individuals with college degrees that's not making $19 an hour. It sounds great, though, to say for this company to put in place that within 2-3 years they need to be at their max. But that's not how that's going to work. And I want to make sure we're not giving out misleading statements and have our communities thinking that that's how that process is going to work. But it sounds really great to do it, though, and it should, maybe others will consider that as well. But I have a couple of questions. Since, you know, I'm very familiar with the community here. And you didn't mention it in your report, but a lot of people in the community have drug addictions and drugs of choice of marijuana. Now, in researching the company and the areas that they reside in is legal. Marijuana is legal. So I'm sure their policies for hiring will be lax as far as drug testing. So are they willing to, you know, relax their policies with drug testing
I can
procedures
ask.
here?
But it is a manufacturing environment, and so I would expect there will be some requirements around it. Not necessarily for past, but for drug testing while someone is an employee. Because from a manufacturing perspective, you can't put other employees at risk. But I can ask the question,
Right.
because they do have a manufacturing facility in California, so I know that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Secondly, reentry efforts. We have a lot of people that's in the area that have background issues. What's their policies around hiring people with background issues? Is there a number of years that they, you know, request a background check? Are they willing to hire people directly coming from a penal institution, employ them from work, get them on board with on-the-job training,
Okay.
et cetera?
I will definitely ask. It's a good question. And that's a priority for us. I know we've had some of those meetings together, so that's a priority for us in looking for existing companies. So totally get it.
Okay. And this may be a Sharita question. So, of course, we've been going through this process even before a couple of us even got on city council when it comes to the Harriet Tubman site. And again, I'm saying that because we have a lot of people who's new to the scene and not aware of what fully took place many years ago. So when the community, they asked, what did the community ask for? Exactly to say, what did they want? They said they wanted mixed use, housing, jobs, so on and so forth. Now, a lot of people got upset that it wasn't zoned how they wanted it to be zoned. Does the M1, the UGC, give the community what they're asking for? Mixed use, jobs, housing.
Councilwoman, the site is currently entirely zoned to M1. The project is looking at 28.94 acres. The remaining 14.67 acres at some point will be rezoned. And so that actually will take us into sort of the next presentation, which talks about the East Chattanooga TIF rising and what would happen with the remainder of the site. Before we go there, I do want to go back to a question you asked about both the drug testing and the sort of the reentry. We did have a conversation. We had a meeting with two representatives from the HR team from the company's Lansing, Illinois facility. We covered some of those questions about reentry. We talked about drug testing. And again, because it is a manufacturing environment, and some jobs, you know, the reentry piece, it all depends on the offense. It depends on the you know, time since served, all of those kinds of things. But they're open to hiring anyone who wants to work. Keeping in mind, the drug testing in a manufacturing environment is mandatory, and it is a safety, it's safety related, and it's something that they will adhere to. So drug testing will happen.
And that's understandable, but just wanted to put it out there. Because
Absolutely.
I've heard so many things that, okay, everybody in this community need to be employed at this site, which sounds great. But reality is, everybody is not gonna be employed at this company, right? And we need to be truthful on what we're saying to this community and not misleading them to think that that's what's gonna happen. And that's all I'm saying. Now, we've had plenty
yes.
of trainings that the city have held in regards to Gestump and also with Volkswagen, and the people that was vetted in that process and the things, the behaviors that I saw at these trainings and workshops, and it wasn't good. So we have to do a better job of the people that we're vetting, and if they're serious about wanting to be employed, they have to have some stake in the game as well. It's not just us saying, here, you have to have, we're giving you a job. You still have to go through the process. And a lot of misleading information is getting put out there for this community. Yes, we get it. We see the data. When it comes to this community, we've heard it time after time after time. Again, how poor this community is, how bringing jobs to this community is just going to impact this community, and they're going to be able to do all these exceptional things. But everybody is not going to make the cut for the job. So what's in place for those individuals that can't make the cut, that need to get jobs, so we can get them on the path of upward mobility, get them a part of this Chattanooga climb, get them whatever words you want to call it for the week. What's in place for those individuals?
We have other opportunities through our Office of Workforce Development, and those are other industries. So we're looking at the different sectors throughout the city and identifying employment opportunities and training opportunities to create pathways into those positions, because we recognize not everyone wants to work in manufacturing, not everybody wants to work in healthcare, not everybody wants to work in an office environment, not everybody wants to work in government, but we do recognize that we have to provide those opportunities, because there are folks who will want to work in manufacturing and who do want to work in healthcare. And so our workforce department is working on that, and this is just one of those paths that they're doing. So as we identify people in the community who are looking for jobs, if they want a pathway to these particular jobs, that's great. But if they decide they want to work in healthcare, we've got that path. If they decide they want to work in food service or hospitality, we've identified that pathway as well. So I recognize that, and thank you for bringing that up, because these jobs aren't for everybody. But there are jobs out there for folks, and we're creating the pathways to identify those and to start matching folks up with those opportunities to move up the pipeline, as we call it.
All right, absolutely. Now, can you go back to the slide? You all had a slide up that showed the housing development, how it previously was with the train
Oh,
running
that would be
behind it.
mine. That's a previous
yours.
presentation.
Can you just go back to that? Is it too late to pull that up?
Was it the housing development as it, before it was torn down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had several calls and emails, and what was said is that people don't want to live in an area where trains are coming through. And here it is, we had a housing development with over 300 and some people that lived there for centuries, right? It was a drug haven. The environment wasn't safe. People were killing each other. All of those things, that you can go on and on and on and see the things that happen in this housing development. There was broken families were coming out of this neighborhood. And a company decides to come to this impoverished, very impoverished community. We're not satisfied. We're gonna rezone the other areas to satisfy the requests of the communities for retail mixed use. Nobody is satisfied. So I'm really just want to know exactly what the issue is because it seemed like that we're giving the community what they're asking for, but nobody is still satisfied. And to me, that bothers me when we're doing everything possible that we can to help our community get into a better place, right? And this term gentrification, which simply means improving the community, the word is used inaccurately. It's being thrown around like it's the latest football catch for the Cowboys to help them with a touchdown. But it gives the wrong impression to this community that's a very poor community. Now, black people are being removed. If this company come in, nobody's gonna get jobs. We're gonna seek other people here. Or, you know, those kind of things, those myths we need to really dispel because it's causing friction when the wrong information is getting out there. I think that this is a great opportunity for whomever want to come work at the pond, whether if it's the East Chattanooga area, if it's somebody off of Missionary Ridge, where, you know, out in Park area, because we have a lot of distressed communities and the people look like me, black people. So it affords you the opportunity to be a part of something that's great and exciting here. But I want to make sure that the community, their needs, their concerns, their wants, their desires are getting addressed as well.
Can I speak to a couple of those issues? One is, and I recognize the concern over the word gentrification, and the way I describe that is going through a redevelopment process that's going to create substantial increase in property values and substantial increase in rents, because that's how you push people out. And so one of the good things about manufacturing, and that's one of the reasons why the chamber has been supportive of putting manufacturing on that site, is it's not going to do that. Now, we do not believe this project is going to lower values, but I also don't think that this is going to create what happened on the south side. And so having this project allows for a substantial investment, substantial economic opportunity to happen without necessarily creating a gentrification process. Now, there are going to be some people who are not happy about that. I ran into that before when somebody told me they wanted a Trader Joe's in another neighborhood, that they were betting on gentrification. So if you own the land and if you own lots of rental property, that's what you want to happen. Mm-hmm. But I would tell you, this project, I think in particular, creates economic opportunity without necessarily creating a significant economic burden on the people that live there. So on the manufacturing perspective, I would tell you that. And then in a past conversation, I talked about downtown redevelopment with someone who is heavily involved in the redevelopment of downtown and the Riverwalk, and their comment to me was, people make it sound like everybody agreed when that was happening and that everybody was on the same page, but it was a vicious battle. Not everybody agreed with it, not everybody thought it was a good idea, and there were lots of people who were actively trying to keep it from happening. And so I don't think there's an opportunity to stop that from happening here. I think that my hope is that this council and the county commission and others will do their best to make the best thing they can happen in this neighborhood. So I think that there's, this will not be easy, and you will not make everyone happy. And one of my favorite lines from County Mayor Coppinger, when he swears in his other colleagues is, after the vote, that's the day you are the most popular, because after that, you're going to take another vote, and you're not going to be as popular as you were. Mm-hmm. And we have to recognize that we have to do the best job we can, and that's what we've tried to do on this project. When I showed this picture to the team at the state around the grant process, I literally had someone cry when they saw it. So I feel very comfortable knowing that at least where we're headed is better than where we were.
Right, absolutely, because when I look at this picture, I remember when, and it's really heartbreaking what has happened here and to families that live there. And for people who don't live in this community, who've never lived in this community, and probably will never make an investment in this community, voices to be just as loud as the trains that run through there every day, that's foolishness. We should be hearing from the people who reside in that community, people that have stake in the community, that want to see a difference in that community. Those are the people that I want to hear from. Those are the people that I want to make sure have a job. Those are the people that need to be involved in this community benefits agreement. Not saying that they don't need support from those outside entities, that's great, but the people leading the charge, it need to be individuals. And I'm getting choked up here because, I don't know if you all know, but I lived in this housing development.
Mm-hmm.
So, my voice matters when it comes to this here. And I just really got some concerns and really wish that the people that live in this community can really see the value that's gonna be added to it. But that's it for you, Charles. But Sharita, I got another question. Is that we talked about the matching fund, the 100K, 100,000 K in 2018.
Correct.
Now, is that different from the 200 million that came out the capital budget, or that was two different grants for the sewer?
The matching funds were for the State of Tennessee Site Development Grant. That was for the due diligence studies and the drawings to relocate the sewer. And then the sewer funds, that was $2 million that was approved during the budget process. That is for the actual relocation of the sewer, and that's a different sewer. That's a different item that's coming up later.
Thank you.
You good, Councilwoman?
Yeah.
All right. Before go to the next council person, I have to acknowledge one thing Councilwoman acknowledged is that hearing from the community and hearing from the people is something that's great, and we always champion for that because we can't do our job without hearing from the community. And we have the Tubman Steering Committee here today, some of the members. If you guys could stand up, please. And we have the people who are working on getting town hall committees together to have town hall meetings. If you could stand up for me, please. Ms. Evelina, Austin, Quentin, this group of people have been working tirelessly to make sure we get this done. Mr. Billy, thank you for coming. And they are working with the community and getting the words out. Thank you so much for all you guys do. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, Councilman Gilbert.
Ms. Frida, I might be for Mr. Woods or one or the other. A lot of companies are going to incentive programs because of trying to find employees. Are we going to have some kind of incentive program for the area to work in this particular place? Are they involved in incentives?
In terms of.
It could be a variety of what other jobs is there currently. It could be the management jobs, it could be the mid jobs, but that's a lot of, people are going to incentives lately in most companies. Are they doing the same thing?
I don't know that they've even figured out how they're going to go through their hiring process yet. I think they're going to look to us to help them from an employee recruiting and screening process. But in terms of kind of how they're going to go through the rest of their hiring process, I think they got to build a plan.
Will they actually come back and let us know, some of the questions that we asked, myself, Councilwoman Coonrod, and probably others? Will y'all come back prior to them bulldozing and starting to let us know some of the answers to the questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I don't foresee them doing something like what you'd see with, and I'm trying to make sure I understand your question, but like what you'd see maybe a truck driving company do with CDL drivers where they say $5,000 sign-on bonus or something like that. I don't see that happening, just given the positions they've got. I think their goal is going to be to create an environment where they're an employer of choice.
No, another incentive is not that. I'm speaking of, for an example, you're starting at $13 an hour. But if a worker get in there and does a good job at a certain period of time, say 6 months, then they can go from there to this.
Did you guys talk about that?
Okay. So when we met with the HR directors, we talked a little bit about how that works. So that, for instance, some of the jobs start at 13 an hour. You have others, for instance, the milling jobs that will start at 16. And then and the training process is, someone is assigned to train you during that. So some of it, when you mentioned the computer-based training, it really and truly is hands-on mentorship kind of training that happens. And then once you master that skill, then you're ready to go to the next level. So you theoretically could come in, high school diploma, $16 an hour, working in milling. After you master that, you then work up to batch making. After you after you master that skill, you're now at roughly $18 an hour or $20 an hour from batch making. Then you would then go up to shading. Again, it all depends on the skills that you acquire as you're moving up the ladder, and then they backfill the other positions with new hires. And so that's where, when they come online, they would be hiring in phases. You would learn a skill, and then you would move up, and then they would hire the next phase under you, and then that person would be training. And so again, it's like their formula is sort of the mentorship kind of training model, but then you move up the ladder, and then there are opportunities to move from there. And that's again, looking at the type of, making sure we had the kind of company that was creating jobs where you could hire in and there were defined career paths. You start at one job and you know you can move up. Or it's not just a company where everybody's going to come in at a certain level and then there are no opportunities to come up. We were not looking for that kind of a company, which is why we selected this particular type of company.
Okay, that sounds good. But are we all going to look at the local area, which is Avondale, first, to make sure that we can get them trained, get them in there?
Their HR director from the Illinois facility would be coming down and helping to hire. She offered to knock doors to find folks that want to work.
That's good. I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. Jermaine, I was right, you was wrong. I want to say that. Thank you.
Never at the end of that. Thank you, Councilman. One quick question, Sharita or Charles. The problems that we had in the 1950s and 60s when it came to pollution and when it came to chemical plants coming into our communities, why a chemical plant now? Why this plant now in 2019 with all the things like that went on the south side with the odors and the things that went on in those communities?
Maybe I'll start and then Sharita can fill in as needed. So first thing I'd say, it is not a chemical plant. It is a paint facility. So,
Thank
and
you.
I want to be very clear. The second thing I'd say is there's a host of requirements that are in place now that weren't in place then. And the other thing I'd say is this is a brand new state-of-the-art facility. This is not something that's been sitting around for 60 years. So all of the processes follow within that. This is a company that's got a great track record over a long period of time. And so I want to be particularly clear around that.
Okay.
And that's in addition to kind of the federal requirements that happen. So this company has a great track record. Again, it is a paint company. It is not a chemical company. And then I'd also say that the bulk of what they're going to produce is water-based.
Okay. And that's one thing, too, to speak to their LEED certification. You know, probably in the 50s and the 60s, those companies didn't have to have that LEED certification. So it's a new standard that's far and beyond the Call of Duty. So I do greatly appreciate that. The other thing is that, to piggyback off what Councilman Gilbert said, is that the people in the community will not get the jobs or won't get the jobs. And I want to say that the HR person did tell us that she would be willing to knock on doors and walk the community with us to make sure we find those people for the jobs. And to the steering committee for the Tubman site, I think that's one thing that we're going to have to work on getting into the community, is that we find those community members that want to work. And the ones that want to work, we bring them to the site, we bring them to the room and help them get that transition so that they can get the jobs, because so often these jobs come up and people don't come to the table. So I think Ms. Johnny, Ms. Henley, all of us, we're going to work to grab those people and bring them there so that we can say, hey, this is an opportunity, let's take advantage of it.
And this is about creating the opportunity. And I think that certainly that group, and then I think through any partnerships we can have with the Hardy Elementary School that's there, you know, very close by, and being able to reach out to parents of the students that are going there. I think every opportunity we can have to leverage things like the youth center, all of that, to be able to identify people that do want that opportunity.
Okay, and do we have anything right now? I know we're going to go to another part of the report. Do we have anything right now to speak on when the first dirt turns? Because I know Austin is here and he's big on the earn workers and the IBW and the people that are getting those jobs. Do we have any information at this point to how they're going to hire to build the facility?
We know they want to start construction in the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
I know right now they're working on hiring an engineering firm, and so that they first need architect and engineering and civil, but from there, I think that'll be the next step. As I understand it, in my conversations with the company earlier this week. They've already had some local conversations, it sounds like. Have you been party to that? So I think there's some discussion already starting.
All right, we'd love to hear more of that. Thank you so much. I guess we will go on to the next part of the presentation. Hello, Jermaine.
Hello. It's actually a different presentation. Yeah, there we go. All right, Jermaine Freeman, Economic Development. Thank you, Council. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the TIF and why we want to do a TIF in the East Chattanooga community around the Tubman site. As many of you are aware, over the past several years, we've witnessed a tremendous amount of growth here in our city. We've seen lots of new office buildings and apartment buildings and the renovation of manufacturing space across our city as our city has grown jobs and as our economy has expanded. These are some headlines from the Times Free Press, but with that expansion, we've seen our jobless rate fall to all-time lows. Right now, we're around 3.4% across the Chattanooga metro area, that compared to the national unemployment rate, which is around 3.5%. So we're beating the national average. We're also seeing Chattanooga income growing, some of the fastest growing incomes across the country. Last year, the Times Free Press reported that Chattanooga had the 6th highest wage growth of 382 metro areas across the country. With all that expansion and with all the growth, we have struggled to find and to equate that growth with the East Chattanooga community. As you saw in Charles's presentation, there haven't been any major economic development projects in over 100 years in East Chattanooga. High unemployment that's north of 9% still persists in a city where the overall metro area has an unemployment rate of around 3.4%. We have a significant percentage of the population within the East Chattanooga community that lack a post-secondary credential, and a significant percentage of folks lack adequate transportation. As Charles mentioned, that is not us trying to knock East Chattanooga or anything of that sort, but that is where we are saying enough is enough. And so East Chattanooga is rising, and the city of Chattanooga is going to be there every step of the way. These small businesses operate in East Chattanooga. They are recipients of small business grants that the city has been able to give out since 2015. RMJ Tactical, Sensicom, First Step Christian Daycare, I won't name them all, but they cover sort of the gamut of industries in terms of groceries, childcare, manufacturing, and apparel. The city has also gone on to do major investments, major public infrastructure investments in East Chattanooga, spending over $10 million in public improvements and public investments. They include the renovation of the Wilcox Tunnel, the building of the new Avondale YFD Center, and the new fire station number 4. And so with that, we now have an opportunity to take a parcel of land and several other adjacent parcels of land that have been sitting vacant and that have not been on the tax rolls, and we can now leverage those for private sector development, which is what Nippon Paint offers us. Nippon Paint, as Charles mentioned, will occupy about 29 acres of the former Harriet Tubman site. It's a $61 million project that'll create 150 full-time jobs, with most jobs paying between $13 and $31 per hour. And so that is why we have decided to do a TIF in this area around the Harriet Tubman site and some of the adjacent parcels. So before I get sort of into kind of what our plan is for the TIF, let's take a moment to step back and to look at what actually a TIF is. So a TIF is tax increment financing, which means that we take the areas that are within the TIF district, we look at the property tax for the base year, and then we compare that property tax to what is created once construction is complete and the property is improved. The difference between the property value and the property tax that are paid once the construction is complete and the property taxes at the base year create what's called the increment. The increment is then used to finance redevelopment projects in a specific area and in the specific TIF area. So what happens is that once the company, and in this case the company is Nippon Paint, they are the project, they will pay their full freight of property taxes. Every year, they will pay the full amount of property taxes that are due to the city and county. The city and county will then use those funds to finance the redevelopment area that we have included in the TIF district. Hamilton County Schools will still continue to get their property tax, will still continue to get their share of property taxes, and both the city and county will also have the property taxes that are allotted for debt service. And so the TIF funds can be used by state law for public infrastructure, which includes the things that you see on the screen, so sidewalks, street lighting, roads, curb cuts, paving, public parks, and public utilities. And so what we are proposing is to do a $6.5 million TIF over the span of 20 years. That TIF could be used to further redevelop the remaining 15 acres around the Tubman site and the 5 acres of properties along Southern Street that will create better connectivity between the company and the community. Our goal is to make sure that once the Nippon Paint facility is constructed on the Tubman site, because it will be constructed closer to the rail yard, we want to make sure that the project, that the Nippon Paint project is not isolated from the community, and that community members have the ability to access it easily because of improved connectivity and improved infrastructure, including sidewalks and streets. So again, the site includes approximately 15 acres of available space of the Tubman site that will be along Roanoke Avenue. The TIF district would also include 5 acres across Southern Street. The increment would be used for public infrastructure improvements. And as we redeveloped the front 15 acres of the site along Roanoke Avenue and the 5 acres across Southern Street, that could potentially allow us to bring in private sector developers and therefore move this property out of ownership of the city of Chattanooga and back onto the tax rolls, which would enable us to create even more increment above and beyond what we'll see from the development of the Nippon Paint facility. So what we intend to do is that if the TIF is approved by the City Council and the County Commission, we would like to begin to hold some public meetings in January of 2020 to begin to really talk to the community about what the community would like to see in terms of the redevelopment of the front 15 acres of the Tubman site and the 5 acres along Southern Street. We would then take the input that we gather from those community input meetings and then make that information available through the RFP process and a request for proposals that we would issue for a master developer to come in and redevelop the site. This is sort of a map of the area. So this includes obviously the big parcel in the middle with the purple outline is the Tubman site, and the smaller parcels across the street to the south, to the southwest, are the parcels along Southern Street. Those parcels encapsulate, come to be about 5 acres, and the company will be located sort of in the northernmost northwest quadrant of the big parcel. This is another view of it from GIS. And so here are the sort of the next steps in our TIF process. So right now, and my slide is outdated, but we submitted, and the IDB passed a resolution of intent for the council to consider the completed TIF application that was approved yesterday. Your role as the city council next week will be to decide the but-for and to authorize the preparation of an economic impact plan and to work with the mayor's office to establish an application review committee. As a reminder, the application review committee is typically 5 people. 2 people are provided by the city council, 2 people are provided by the mayor and the mayor's office, and then 1 person will be a representative from the Chamber of Commerce. The next step is that the application review committee would then meet to discuss the TIF application and the process to date, and then the application review committee would set a date for a public hearing at an industrial development board meeting. After that, the industrial development board would hold that public hearing and then submit the economic plan that's prepared to the city council along with a summary of the comments that they heard from the public hearing. And then the last step is that the city council and the county commission would vote to approve the creation of the TIF district. So the TIF must be approved by local governments. It must also be approved by state officials. One new wrinkle into the process this time is that in addition to getting approval from the state comptroller's office, we also now must get additional approval from the state building commission after the comptroller's office. We would like to target this January for community engagement meetings. We would like to release an RFP in February, and we would like to have a selection made in March. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Hold on one second, Jermaine. Councilman Chip Henderson.
Thank you, sir. So the vote next week is just basically to send the TIF to the IDB for the economic development plan, economic community plan.
That is correct.
Correct.
That is correct.
And then they'll send it back to us for the approval of the TIF.
That is correct. So after the public hearing, they will send that back to you. They will send the economic impact plan back to you, along with the summary of the public comments that were heard through the public hearing.
And so right now, the boundaries of the TIF district are just basically what you had outlined.
Yes, sir. And the streets that are adjacent to the parcels.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. So what's the deadline that we need to have the people appointed to this application committee?
Well, we would want you to go ahead to start thinking about the application review committee. I know that the last time we went through a TIF process, you all were able to provide 2 names for us, and then a couple of those people had some scheduling conflicts, and so we had some missteps in terms of scheduling meetings because they weren't available, and you all had to find an alternate. So I think this time around, we would like for you to go ahead and start thinking about the application review committee selections, and we would probably appreciate 4 names. 2 names will obviously be selected to be on the committee, but then it would be helpful to have 2 alternates as well in the event that the 2 people that you initially select are not available. We would obviously like to keep this process moving, so it would be great if you could possibly have names for us as soon as early next week.
Okay, do you want us to email it to you, or we just meet as a council, discuss, or say?
Well, I think what we would expect is information from the chair, and so I think we would expect the chair to give us the names. And I think the chair would probably work with the chief of staff to provide those names.
And exactly what would the master developer be doing?
So the master developer would take the input that we hear from the community engagement meetings and then use that to sort of inform and help he or she to decide how to develop the site and how to recruit companies to the site and businesses to the site. And sort of help to plan and design what the remaining 15 acres could potentially look like in terms of development, whether or not it's mixed-use development, whether or not it's offices, whether or not it's other businesses, whether or not it's a child care facility. That's what the master developer would be doing.
So really getting the same input that they've already stressed that they want to have.
Well, so the input, there would be some of it would be a repetition, but this is also to sort of focus now for us to be able to say, okay, because remember, there's no amount of community engagement. There's no such thing as too much. And so this would be an opportunity for us to say, okay, now that we have an anchor tenant, which is what we've been pursuing this entire time, what do you all want to see with the remainder of the site? Because now this is what we have to work with.
Okay. And I meant to ask Sharita this question on that previous slide, because we're donating them the parcel for the plant. Now, if they decide we're gonna close our Chattanooga location, does that property come back to the city of Chattanooga? What happens?
Yeah.
I can speak to that really quickly. So there's a reversionary clause. If they close down operations between now and 2030, that there is a reversionary clause where the city can basically say, you give us that back.
Okay.
I think there can be a choice by the city instead to take payment for the value of the land.
Okay. Thank you. Now, so the funding from the TIF,
Yes.
with the master developer, whatever they decide to come out, so what would the money generated from the plant be used for?
It will be used for public infrastructure. So it will be used to provide better connectivity between the community and the plant, because remember, the plant is the driver of the increment. And we don't want the plant to be isolated. We want the officials from Nippon Paint very much made this clear in our negotiations with them, is that they want to feel like they are a part of the community. And so we want to be able to connect them to the community as much as possible.
Great idea. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Jermaine, with the things that'll be, the infrastructure that will be done, how does that look with finding a person to come in, because to come in and develop, whether it's affordable housing, storefronts, things of that nature, because we hear about affordable housing, and I think I spoke to Sharita about this, it's still, I haven't been able to find where what's affordable for me may not be affordable for Jermaine. So if you're looking for a $50,000 house or a $100,000 house, I would like to see the numbers on what does it take to build, and maybe Chip can answer that for me, to build a house these days, you know, and to say that it's affordable. Can you build a $100,000 brand new house or 2 to 3 bedroom house? And what type of incentive or what type of things have to be done? And I'm assuming that you're saying the infrastructure and the things that will be put in place will help enhance the part to where someone can come and help build affordable housing.
That's correct, because a lot of times what developers will run into, and Donna could probably speak to this way better than I ever could, but a lot of times what developers will run into is that the cost of creating the infrastructure or improving infrastructure around a development can be very expensive. And so if the city has the opportunity to come in and to enhance or improve that public infrastructure to assist a developer, because remember, we are going out ahead of the market on this project, right? So this TIF is, we're doing this in an area that has seen disinvestment over a number of years.
Right.
And because we are out ahead of the market, it is in our interest, and it also helps the community if we can help a developer by being able to subsidize the cost of the infrastructure improvements.
All right, and in doing your tenure here, how do you feel about when you say in East Chattanooga? I've talked to people that own businesses. Say I've talked to the CEO of Walmart or the public relations at Publix, and when you try to get grocery stores or get people to invest in that area, they'll tell you the spending capital is not there, or they'll tell you the mass of people to sustain my store is not there. How do you feel this creation or this forecast that you're seeing, how do you think that will go in to helping bring other industry in, other businesses in to rise East Chattanooga again?
Well, so I think our hope is that as we continue, as we move through this process and we try to redevelop the area, more people may be drawn to the area, but more people will also be working in the area.
Right.
And so that will create an opportunity for businesses that are located in the area to potentially make more revenue. I mean, as you saw in the slide presentation that Charles did, with the median household income around $25,000, that is not, that's no disposable income. And so it is difficult for businesses to locate there, especially retail, some retail businesses, because there's just not a lot of disposable income to be able to spend to support retail. Having said that, our hope from the city's perspective is that we can use this again to help a master developer to come through, provide improved connectivity to Nippon Paint, which is the project, and help a developer by paying for the public infrastructure through the TIF process.
Okay. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You hit on, because I was going to say that this is a community we talking about make 25,000. Majority of the area is pretty much renters. It's no way with $25,000 you're going to be able to afford a $100,000 house. That's just not affordable. We can afford $200 on some Jordans, though. But my question with this is, and like you said, Donna is the best at it, Can you just help me understand what affordable housing truly means? Because I done got confused with what the community say affordable housing is, and we get the low income, say we need low income housing, and we say that's the affordable house. So can you just explain to me what exactly that it means? Because we use it for every single thing. A new car come in town, I need affordable housing. A job come, I need affordable housing. I need, for a grocery store coming, I need affordable housing. What exactly does that word mean?
Affordable housing means that you are not spending more than 30% of your gross income to be housed. So that's a standard. Anybody that is in the housing industry, that's commonly used in everywhere. We prefer to be specific and use the term income restricted housing, because you're right, there is a difference. I mean, I was sitting on the planning commission once, and there was someone who was talking about their presentation, and they said their project, and they said, we're doing everything we can to make sure it's affordable housing, and we really, really, really are trying to make sure that no houses are above $250,000. I laughed too. That's not affordable housing. Right. So if you're spending more than 30% of your gross income on housing, that's considered unaffordable. Income restricted housing is housing that is reserved for folks with specific income levels. And we typically work a lot with 60% of the area median income. By way of example, a single person now who makes $38,000 or less a year, one person household, is considered low to moderate income, in part for what Jermaine has said, and Charles and Sharita mentioned this also, that the tide is rising in Chattanooga as it relates to income and to housing prices and to rent. But not everybody is benefiting from that. And so what we have been very specific about this administration, Mayor Burke, since before I got here, is income restricted housing. So housing that can be afforded by folks whose incomes are not as high as some of the incomes that we see across the city. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question.
Okay.
So with the TIF going towards projects that's possibly going to bring housing and those kind of things, will it be income restricted housing? Or is it going to be affordable housing?
We would like to, frankly, that will be determined by the master developer's response, because Jermaine's done a beautiful job of saying this. The money that will come to the site is private money. It's not the city's money. So a master developer will have to be convinced that he or she will bring millions and millions of dollars to that site, and that they will get more money back than they put in. And so our desire, strong desire, is that when the site is built out, that folks who live in the neighborhood, and there's a great opportunity now that we have higher paying jobs going to the site, that those folks will be able to live on that site if they would like, or anywhere else they would like to live in East Chattanooga. They may want to buy a house and renovate it, because now they'll have the income to do so. So we will, as has been stated, we will have meetings with the community. That master developer will hear what we heard, and then they will decide what makes sense for their private investment on the site. So just to make sure, I know how you like to make sure that people who are recording stuff hear what you're saying. What I'm saying is, yes, we would like for there to be high quality income restricted housing on the site, mixed with some other housing and commercial types.
Which sounds great to me, because in order for a community that's 25,000 or less, you need to have some mixed incomes in there as well to thrive, to have disposable income, to get a Trader Joe's, to get a coffee shop, to get a sandwich shop, whatever it is that we want to have to come to the community. Hey, I'm on board for all of that, Austin. But the end result is we need to make sure we're increasing those households with income that can support whatever the community is asking that come. But you're right. I want to make sure, like I said, we've got new people that's done arrived on the scene, not familiar with really how the process has been going from years back with this site, and the narrative has been jumbled up, and it's like we're moving jingle pieces. Whoever gonna put the information out this way, is it gonna fall or tilt, or who gonna follow who? I want to make sure that the right information is given out. And the word affordable housing, it has been misused from time and time again. And we just really need to understand what it truly means. And like you say, income restricted, what does that mean? 25,000 and below, you need income restricted housing.
Yes. So by way of example, if a person made $38,000, I'm sorry, a household of one makes $38,000, they are eligible for housing that's reserved for the 80% of the area median income, that income level. And depending upon their debt service, they could in fact be approved for a mortgage at $100,000.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And thank you. Piggybacking off what you said, Councilwoman, I was sitting here doing some numbers. If you're making $25,000 a year, you should be able to afford a $625 a month income. And you know, rent. Yeah, rent. I apologize. $625 rent a month. And you know, a lot of times I've seen houses in Avondale and East Chattanooga right now that are renting for $625, $500, $400, and still I hear that we need more affordable housing. Still I hear that, you know, we're not meeting that breaking point to get people to that quality of life that they also deserve. So once again, encourage the committee, encourage the steering committee that we have to start getting our communities credit together. We have to start getting them prepared for jobs, and I think that's something that definitely Councilman Gilbert, we can use our centers for, so people can come and start getting credit repair and seeing how to get their credit on the right track. So when these homes do come available, they're prepared and not trying to play catch up. So thanks for this great presentation, Jermaine. You did an awesome job. And right now, this is still has to come up for vote. This is not, this was the presentation for us to receive the information that you have researched and looked up, and we still have to vote on this process, whether it's the TIF, even the Nippon Paint Company receiving the land, correct?
That is correct. So next week you will have a vote on the donation agreement itself. You will also have a vote to authorize the Industrial Development Board through a resolution of intent to prepare an economic impact plan for the TIF portion of this. Obviously, the TIF can't happen without the company. So,
right.
And then as you decide whether or not to allow the IDB to proceed with the economic impact plan, you also have to decide that the public infrastructure improvements that the city intends to make as part of the TIF district are not in the capital improvement plan, and
Absolutely.
therefore it meets the buffer requirement.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman?
Yeah, and just, I really want to put a plug out there about YFD. I told you they the best department in the city of Chattanooga. We've already been ahead of the game because that's what our program and Office of Family Empowerment, that's what we do. Even when Yolanda go out with her outreach program, she's having people on site, Mr. Ivan Brown, that come and talk about getting your credit repaired, restoring your credit, and taking them through the process. That's a free service that we're giving to people that's in the community. We need people to come take advantage of these services. When they come and get their light bill paid, their gas bill paid, their rent paid, they need to take advantage of the additional service that's available so we can, Chattanooga climb, that's what it's about, right?
That's it.
So we need to make sure to pass that information on so we can get people in the pipeline of getting these great jobs, their credit repair, $25,000 a year. We're increasing that amount, you're becoming a homeowner, right?
That's right.
So that's what we're moving forward to.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Is that it? That is it. Awesome job. Thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from you again. We are adjourned till 6 o'clock.
Why won't you let me drink?